Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here on this beautiful Wednesday morning, week of crossover, after crossover, and we've got some good work to do this morning. I know there's lots of conflicts going on and other meetings and committee meetings, appropriations being one very important one, but looking forward to the next few weeks and looking at some agriculture and consumer affair bills. I'd love to ask committee member Karen Bennett, representative, if she would open us up with a prayer as we normally do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we come before you this morning with an open heart, humbled to be thy servant, to serve thy people. Now be with us, dear Lord, as we review the work in before us. Lead and guide us. In God's name I pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. Before we get started, I want to identify somebody. Our leg counsel, Dave Berry, is here, and he has done a phenomenal job the last few years for our Ag Committee, Senate, House, and I don't know what other committees, but he has been a great help to me and all our Ag bills coming through. And he is leaving, going on to bigger and better things out in the world. And so I just want to wish him well and thank you for all your hard work for the legislature and this committee through the last few years. So Dave, we'll miss you, but wish you well, and whatever you do, I know you'll be very, very successful. And so we've got lots of legal help this morning here, besides those on our committee. But Paul Higby, thank you for being here this morning too. Looking forward to working with you the rest of the session on our bills. So first up, we have SB 149, Senator John Albers, and thank you for being here this morning, Senator. I think this is our first Senate bill this year, and got a good consumer affairs bill, not an ag bill, but a good consumer affairs bill this morning.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and this august committee. It is my true honor and privilege to present Senate Bill 149 to you, which is the Georgia Door-to-Door Sales Act. Just to give a little bit of a background, this is modeled very similar to the Federal Trade Commission, which has a national door-to-door sales act. It's really a cooling off rule. And if you can imagine, if someone knocks on your door and is a real high-pressure type salesman, they could take advantage of people. And typically they take advantage of our elderly, those who might not speak English as well or might have a special need, or just were having one of those days where you didn't need that extra knock on the door. Now, what this isn't is you called somebody and said, hey, I need an estimate, come to my house, right? So this is the people that are proactively coming to you. And this does something pretty simple, but I think will be very meaningful, which is it's going to give consumers a 30-day cooling off period for any product or services. And I'm going to ask for a minor amendment, Mr. Chairman, that I believe you're aware of, but it'll do three things. If it costs $10,000 or more, if it is being financed for 10 years or 120 months or more, or is eligible for federal tax credits. And let me give you a little example for where this originated. I want to give a big shout out to Randy Travis with the Fox 5 Live team. I'm sure over the years many of us have seen a story or two that he did. And this happened throughout the state, but more actually in South Georgia, where some out-of-state companies sold folks solar solutions, some on top of trailers, some with promises that you would not have an electric bill ever again. And it put these folks in a very difficult position of all of a sudden taking out basically a second mortgage on their home and getting little to no savings. In some cases, also caused damages to their house during installation processes. And these typical fly-by-night companies, of course, they disappear and they leave that poor consumer where they are. And we don't ever want that to happen. In the same vein, we're not trying to prevent any industry, right? We want to see people do things. I'm a fan of electric powered cars and solar panels and those type of things. We just want to make sure that it's being done right and we're protecting all the people of Georgia, but again, oftentimes it is our most vulnerable. So that's really the bill. It is pretty straightforward in its language, and I don't want to read each and every word, Mr. Chairman, but I would love to yield to any questions or comments that you or your committee may have.
Yes, Senator, we do have a question number 28, who is
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman
Chairman.
Yerler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this bill. I'm actually a witness to this happening. I was the mayor of a small community in South Georgia. We had our own electric distribution system. Some bad actors approached an elderly person in our community and really oversold them a solar system and convinced them that they were going to make money from the city basically on that system and never have a bill again. And I appreciate you bringing this bill.
And thank you for sharing that story.
Do we have any other questions or comments from committee? We do have one person wants to speak to the bill as well too. This is, I think, let's get Georgia EMC Kevin Curtin, if you want to come maybe to the podium, Mike, and give your comments from EMC perspective or electric and.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Kevin Curtin with Georgia EMC. Just wanted to come and let you know that we fully support Senate Bill 149. Appreciate Senator Albers for bringing it. We have seen a lot of our members around the state be taken advantage of, especially elderly and folks who maybe English is their second language, where they didn't really know what they were buying. Here's an example. Here's a sales contract for a solar company. One solar contract, you can see how thick that is. And right now, under current law, you only have 3 days to rescind this contract. Very complex. Deals with 25-year projections of power savings. 3 days simply isn't enough time to check the facts on this sort of thing. So we appreciate the approach taken by Senate Bill 149. Give the consumers a little bit more time to check the facts before they're held responsible for things that cost up to $80,000, $90,000 and financed over typically 20 to 30 years. That's a lot of money to be held responsible for in a sales-to-sales, a door-to-door sales contract. This isn't buying Girl Scout cookies or a vacuum cleaner or a hairbrush. This is buying something that many times is as expensive as your house. I don't know of anything else that's sold that's this expensive door-to-door. And door-to-door just has some undue pressures put on people. So we appreciate the approach taken. We recommend the bill to the committee, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Do we? I do see a question, Representative Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Curtin, thank you, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill. I support this bill. I think this is a wonderful idea. I've heard some of these horror stories. It's my understanding sometimes people are also urged to put up their home. They actually pledge a second mortgage on their home for some of these contracts that go on for 20 years. Mm-hmm. The contract is then assigned to a third party, which defeats defenses that you would normally have. And so it really puts people in a terrible, terrible position. Have you heard or seen of any of that happening as well?
We have, and also another thing I'll point out that is a practice which hopefully this will cure. As an example, I have a copy of a contract here by one of the solar companies. Even if you try to dispute this after the 3-day period, it requires you to go to arbitration, and you have to go to arbitration in Mesa, Arizona, so you have to show up in person. Kind of hard to do that if you're a homeowner in Carrollton, Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Senator, I appreciate you bringing the bill.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the senator on this bill? I think it's hearing only today. I believe we got one other question, number 16.
Thanks for bringing this. I think it's very necessary. My question would be, assuming that someone violates, this goes into law, someone violates this, what's the ramifications? And if the contract's there, someone's paid, how are they going to get reimbursed if they put money down, or what's the process in the event that someone breaks this?
Great question, and thank you for your extraordinary work in this area as well. And I know that we've got some other legislation, I think, to seek to even take this further. In this case, it would be no different than any other contract, whether you did it for an automobile or you had a warranty, et cetera, where you would, at that point, work with an attorney and file damage against those, and they would be not only culpable for the dollars you spent, but then likely for the legal fees you expended as well.
Senator, thank you for bringing this bill. I know we've all heard of and heard examples of consumers and homeowners being taken advantage of by a quick decision that really has ramifications for years and years for those. Also, I'm trying to find it here. Out of an abundance of caution, we've exempted several industries or here, automobiles. Could you speak to that just briefly?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Chairman. And if you look on lines 24, this would really kind of helps out part of that process as well, because and I'm going to ask at the time that you are going to allow a vote, an amendment on this bill, to strike the words "at least two of," because then it would be something that is over $10,000, is leased or financed at 10 years or more, right, which would exclude automobiles, and is eligible for federal tax credits, right? So it really kind of, at that point, narrowly tailors that to someone wanting to do solar. Again, not trying to hold back that industry, but making sure that we're protecting the consumers.
Okay, so we're working off LC 365488S SCS,
Correct.
and
And then-
are you asking for some substitute language?
Yeah, just striking a few words, and I just wanted to follow up, Mr. Chairman, I apologize, but toward the back of the document, or the bill on lines 100, it talks about the fact that it does not apply to automobiles, vans, trucks, motorized farm equipment, things of that nature. But
So-
yes, I would just like to strike 4 words if you could, and that's really to keep all the interested parties making sure that the learned attorneys are feeling good about how it might affect all industries.
Okay, so we're from line 24. We're proposing to strike at least 2 of.
Yes, sir.
So it would include all 3 of those components before it would be in effect. The 10,000 term of more than 120 months, and tax credits.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay. Since this is hearing only, I think we'll be in the position, Dave, wouldn't we, to draw up a sub? Could you speak to how we would handle this, or come back with a sub at our next meeting?
Prepare up a sub by next meeting and have that all ready to go for you all to look at. And
Okay.
yeah.
Any questions on that proposed change of wording? Okay. Well, thank you, Senator. We look forward to getting this back in front of us and hopefully moving this legislation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Have a
Okay.
great day.
Okay. We're juggling our agenda just a little bit here. No, we're not. Our fellow committee member, Representative Karen Bennett, has H.R. Resolution 185, and she and I have been talking about this bill for quite some time, since last year, I believe, trying to figure out how to solve some issues we have here in Georgia. And I appreciate her hard work and dedication on this. And Representative, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the members of this committee. Good morning again. I'm speaking on, I present to you House Resolution 185, working from LC 510330. This resolution seeks to create a House study committee to study ways that we can incentivize retail food outlets across the state of Georgia in areas where currently there are low to no opportunities. This resolution was presented before this committee last year, and it was passed successfully. It is a bipartisan effort, and we have consulted with different and various stakeholders to bring this about. The purpose is to bring together stakeholders, key state departments, and community expertise to study ways that we can make healthy food retail outlets accessible and affordable to all Georgians across the state. I'm reintroducing the House Healthy Food Retail Study Committee because the need still exists, and COVID may have even made situations worse. There was a Senate study committee a few years ago that established that many Georgians have limited to no access to retail establishments, causing food deserts in certain parts of our great state. In some places where there may be smaller retail providing fruits and vegetables, prices are oftentimes higher than larger grocery stores, and the quality of the food, vegetables, and dairy products may be less than desirable, causing food insecure gaps across our great state. With people living in food deserts having limited access to grocery stores or other outlets to purchase healthy and affordable foods, their health often suffers. The ability to maintain recommended dietary guidelines becomes problematic, and it leads to poor nutrition and negative healthy outcomes, such as high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, and obesity. We know that negative health outcomes may lead to potentially dire health complications in adults and children, which lead to higher medical costs for our state, and oftentimes premature deaths. I must say that while we are number one in a few areas, Georgia's health rankings are in the lower 1/3 of the chart. According to Feeding America, the nation's largest domestic hunger relief organization, an estimated 1.2 million Georgians are facing hunger, including more than 377,000 children. This also impacts our elderly as well. USDA Economic Research Department says that Georgia has the 6th highest share of low-income areas whose residents lack adequate access to supermarkets. So with Georgia being the number one state in agriculture and the number one state to do business, by bringing together stakeholders such as the Department of Ag, Department of Economic Development, and other pertinent state agencies and community organizations and resources, the goal of this committee would be to deliver a report of its findings, recommending ways to incentivize retail of healthy fruits, vegetables, dairy, and other healthy foods across our great state using Georgia's own Georgia Grown. So with this, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you wanting to study this. We've talked about it. My hometown, my home county is one of very good example. We had a very large, nice grocery store in our community, and it closed. Just was no longer very viable, and it was due to I think the couple of dollar stores type popped up within close vicinity and just drew away a lot of their profitable businesses. But those dollar stores did not carry much food, especially no fresh fruit and vegetables and things. They do now stock a little bit more, but it really put that grocery store in an unprofitable place for our community. So now we have to drive outside our county. Our county does not have a grocery store. Crawford County doesn't. Plenty of dollar stores, but no grocery stores. And so I know that's happening not only in rural areas, but it's happening in urban areas too, where it's transportation to a grocery store or access to it. I know my community, my economic development person has worked trying to incentivize the grocery store to someone to come back in and open it up, and it's lots of issues there. It's complicated. It's not straightforward and easy, and I know our demographics and population shifts, and we do have some great grocery stores, but they're all 20 miles away. So if transportation's an issue, and it's really a problem. And I know we have lots of problems in communities with young people eating bad food, wrong food, and having access to that. So I think this again, it's just a hearing only this morning, but I hope our committee will look at this study committee resolution here and see if it's anything we want to add or change. I know Representative Bennett's been working on it. Any questions of her to ask about this? I'm hearing none. I think it might be well received.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, colleagues.
Well, thank you. Along those same lines, I know some people have been listening to Representative Bennett over the last few years and been looking at other ways to maybe solve this problem. And I know this problem probably needs some deeper study right now than just a bill. But I want to ask Representative Cameron to come present House Bill 570 that takes an attempt to possibly solve this. I know some other states have looked at this. I know I was at a NCSL meeting this past year in the fall where agricultural meeting where we discussed this same problem, and the ag chairman from Illinois, who is from Chicago, she has these same issues in her district up there. So Representative Cameron has HB 570, and let's talk a little bit about it this morning, if you could.
Good morning,
Good.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to come before the committee. My LC number is 510346, and first of all, let me thank Representative Bennett for coming forward this morning. I feel like in some ways I'm a broken record, but I live in a rural district that also has urban in it. It's kind of mixed, and we do have some grocery stores, but we have long gaps where we don't have access to food except for dollar stores and a few mom and pops. And what this bill does is kind of build a framework for how we would do this, how we would be able to distribute more food out to people in areas of food desert, especially cities like Atlanta and places like that, but also in places like my district where we have long gaps, 10, 15 miles where there's nothing to access except maybe a Kangaroo Mart, convenience store type of business. Page 2 gives a bunch of definitions of farmers markets and various things. Square footage for a corner store and an eligible area under federal law and those kind of things. But one of the things that when I looked at this situation, I thought would be a good thing is to be able to tie this in with our Georgia farmers and create something where we don't mandate, but we incentivize using Georgia-grown products. We have some of the best produce in the world, and I have an urban school where the children just won't eat fruits and vegetables. They don't see them. So they've got to be introduced to this, and we've got to somehow come up with a plan to give access to this kind of food to people. And people even that live out in the country, you would think would have access to vegetables. A lot of times it's 15, 20 miles in my district before you find a grocery store, a formal grocery store. So that's bringing all these different groups together, Department of Agriculture, Department of Human Services, Economic Development. We've got to work together to develop a long-term plan to be able to do this. And it's not something we can just pass a bill and feel good about and overnight this happens. We're going to have to put some work into developing a plan and how we go about implementing the type of incentives we offer to different kinds of stores to be able to do this. But the Georgia-grown component to me is important because number one, we want more fresh vegetables and fruits, and now we have a big citrus industry, which citrus sometimes has a longer shelf life than maybe bananas or other types of vegetables that we have. And this would give access to our farmers to more places to distribute their products. At the same time, it's a win-win. We get the food to people who need the food. And so, Mr. Chairman, that's basically the basic bill. It puts some components like we'll have a person that'll help you know, with people with businesses, if they need access to SNAP and how to set that program up. We have a farmer's market in Walker County that is a smaller market, but they require the food be grown by the farmers. They can't do resales. They have to, and Walker County has a lot of small farmers and organic farmers. We have a person that raises sheep and makes sheep cheese, for example. And we have a lot of 5-acre and under farms where people raise different types of vegetables and can fruits and vegetables during the summer and sell those kind of things. And they offer the SNAP program where if you give $10 worth of food stamps, you get $20 worth of food, those type of things. So we need to come up with some innovative ways to be able to address this problem and bring the various agencies together. And like I say, it's going to take some work. And what Representative Bennett's talking about is very pertinent to that. How we go about it, the devil's going to be in the details of how we put it together and bring it together to make it work for everyone.
Thank you, Representatives. Are there any questions or comments about this bill? Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Representative. I took a look at this bill, and I think we're definitely on the same page, bringing the key stakeholders together, perhaps doing the study committee and then advancing with these ideas. I think we're on the same page, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I also want to thank Representative Thomas. I know you do a lot of work with the farms within the urban areas of Atlanta. Yeah. So if we could all just coordinating and bring everybody together to get a good plan together. We just don't want to rush something out and send it out and have problems. We want to think this thing through. And so that's where I'm at on this, Mr. Chairman.
You're right. I think this bill really does show how many different resources, different coordinated state agencies and others it's going to take to coordinate if we move anything or make a difference. I guess is what I'm saying. It's not going to be just straightforward one check box. Let's try this. So I think every situation is a little different and unique, and I appreciate some folks have put a lot of thought into this bill on the specifics on how to do it, and I appreciate Representative Bennett on wanting to study this, and this will be a great maybe foundation framework to start from to see for conversation to talk with. But anyway, great bill talking about food deserts and access to healthy food in our state. So seeing no other questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we've got a couple of others wanted to try to hear. Representative Gullett, HB 573, appreciate you being here this morning. Got an issue I think we heard about last year.
Right. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. HB 73, it's LC 510250. I appreciate the time to listen to it. So what this would do, it'd make it unlawful for a person to transfer any dog, cat, or pet rabbit, basically on any roadside, park, recreational area, flea market, outdoor market, or commercial parking lot. It would exempt animal shelters and animal rescue groups, as well as that are part of fair shows, 4-H programs, and similar agricultural exhibitions. And I think it would accomplish 4 things. First, I think it would remove the opportunity for illegal pet sales by unlicensed transient roadside sellers who evade licensing and taxing. I think it would diminish the cost to local governments for pet overpopulation caused by reckless breeders. I think you would see it would protect consumers from sellers who are selling sick animals to unwitting families that get caught up in the moment. And I think it would also give law enforcement and animal control another tool in the tool bag to combat illegal activity. And I kind of go into that a little bit from the the economic burden on locals. I think if you talk to your county commissioners and your city councils who have animal control, that's a big cost. My animal control today is overrun. Adopting animals, pets, dogs and cats specifically. Rabbits are kind of caught up in this a little bit too, but our animal, you know, we're trying to be a no-kill shelter. Our goal is not to, in my county, our goal is not to euthanize animals. Our goal is to adopt these animals out, but the realities are when you have so many animals coming in and few going out, that's just not a reality sometimes. And when you have people, breeders who are really unscrupulous, just trying to make a buck on the side of the road, they'll tell you it's a Chihuahua and you grow up and it's a Great Pyrenees before, you know, when it gets bigger. You know, that's happening, and they'll sit in parking lots from the side of the road and sell you this dog. It's usually not what it is. It's sick. Your daughter's holding your finger saying, "Daddy, can we please?" And, you know, you get home and you got a Pyrenees when you thought it was a Chihuahua, and that's just not good. You know, that's how animals wind up in the shelter. And so this would, you know, stop that. I think this would really help people getting, you know, from getting pets that they really know what they are. They know the temperaments of the animals that they're getting. They know exactly what they're getting. They're not getting sick animals. Number two, as far as law enforcement, you know, and giving them another tool. Right now, when there's someone selling, a lot of times these people are sometimes bad actors. They might be there's a dog fighting ring. One of the biggest ones in Georgia, I think it was the biggest one in Georgia, was in my county, just last year. It's actually become a nationwide thing. And one of the activities that they did was sell dogs. And they weren't licensed to sell dogs, but they were a dog fight. It was a huge, massive, I mean, it really is a national scale. FBI involved, all because of an Amazon driver. First, he got ran off, and then they tried to sell him a dog. So it kind of gave law enforcement an opportunity to go in there and see what was going on. Animal control came, and there was like 100-something dogs in there that were being bred and sold for dog fighting. So it gives them an opportunity to come in and see what's going on, find bigger issues. And then also, we talked about cost savings. We talked about removing opportunities for unlicensed. So yeah, some of these people who are selling on the side of the road, they're not licensed, they're not regulated, and they're not paying taxes. And I think that's as far as we talk about leveling the playing field for the true breeders out there. This is it's not a level playing field, and it gives parity to that. And then again, protecting consumers. We talked about that. This is something that you're not getting what you're buying. You're not getting what you think you're getting, and this would help with that. Additionally, there are already some locals throughout the state who've already passed ordinances like this. Forsyth County, it's a pretty rural county. Lowndes County, Jackson County, Whitfield County. There's also some more. Athens-Clarke County has. So you kind of have a variety of types of localities who have already addressed this issue. But I think it's a bigger issue. Uniformity across the state, I think, would be good, so that people know what they're getting. Just because this might not be in my community, I still might go there and shop, or people might go there and shop and get caught up in the moment with seeing one of these Chihuahua Great Pyrenees dogs that they get caught up with and bring it back to my shelter for my shelter to deal with. So that's the gist of it. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman. I know we talked about it last year a little bit, and trying to get our minds around this problem and how do we solve it.
You do have a question, number 26.
Yes, Representative. You said it perfectly. This is a local issue, and isn't that kind of state? As far as the overreach for local, let the local folks decide what they want to do in their city. Isn't this a little overreaching for the local cities and counties?
So it's a tool in the tool bag that they could use. So if we did it across the, I think parity is good across the state. I think this is a good idea across the state. Some have already done it because we haven't done anything at the state level. But just because the locals have done it, they can't sell it. That doesn't mean my people don't go there and go buy these animals and bring it back to my shelter. So it hasn't really addressed the local shelters. Metro Atlanta, you live in Metro Atlanta. We all shop throughout Metro Atlanta. We don't just stay in your local community. So when you go shopping, I could buy one of those animals in your county, bring it back to my county, where maybe it's illegal, and I still overpopulate my county shelter. So that's why I think it's good from a parity standpoint across the board. And these people will go where it's not. So the only way to really get them out of the state is to get them, across, throughout the state. If you have these different localities around, they're going to pick pockets and they're still evading taxes. So, and that's a state issue too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this bill. I love animals a lot. I think I worked on a bill 2 years ago, and you and I discussed that bill in depth because it truly is a problem. I was looking here, and under the definition of consideration, it looks like, just from reading the definition, this would not be someone who's giving away 2 kittens on a Saturday morning.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is going to be someone who's actually selling
That's right.
the animals.
That's
Okay.
right. Yeah,
Thank you.
It's not getting rid of you have an accidental litter, you're trying to get rid of your litter. That's not what this is addressing at all. This is people who are breeding and selling animals for a buck who aren't licensed.
All right, thank you. I wanted to make sure I clarified that because we do have an issue with, you didn't mention this, but people coming out of state, and they're puppy mills, and they're selling these animals, and once again, you don't know what you're getting. They're not in sanitary conditions. The mothers are treated poorly and are in cages their whole lives just as breedings. So I appreciate you bringing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's just usually severely inbred too, that you can't see when they're puppies, but when they get older.
Are there any other questions? Representative, I think you have narrowed this bill down. Line 21, where it starts, what it shall not apply to. I appreciate that on there. And it's,
Right.
I just want to make sure our committee's clear what it does and what it doesn't do in situations. So I do have another question here or some comments.
Yeah. Thanks for this. In line 11, you have a transfer or an offer for consideration, and I understand what we said offer for consideration is. A transfer, concerned that the language transfer may be that I have 2 hunting dogs that are available and I'm transferring those hunting dogs to a relative or something. I know it's specific to a seller transaction. I just want to make sure that transferring property or transferring a dog isn't something that would be slowed down, I guess.
Yeah, but we talk about for consideration, so I think that's the important part of what you're talking about. So if you're giving that to your family member, payment for consideration, including but not limited to any fee, property rights. So,
It's the word "or" I'm concerned about. If it's transfer or that, but just
transfer or an offer for consideration.
so if it's one or the other.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll look at that. So transfer, I think that wouldn't apply here. That's not the goal here. And if you want to transfer it, you can go to the police department. That's line 27, prearranged transfer. Or other similar police. Yeah, I'll look at that. I don't think that's going to apply to your family members though. That's not the intent, and I think it's exempted here.
Right. Okay.
Well, Dave Barrett, thank
Yeah.
you for weighing in.
Mr. Chair, we could clean up that language just a little bit, but the way it should be read at the moment is that it is a transfer for consideration or an offer for consideration. So if you actually do the transfer and there's consideration, or if you just merely offer to transfer it for consideration. So that's it. To make it less ambiguous, I would maybe change that to say a transfer or an offer for transfer for consideration.
Okay. Maybe we could
Yeah.
incorporate that in the sub
Yeah.
when we come back to it.
Yeah.
Any other questions, suggestions? We do have one speaker signed up to speak on this, Peggy McCarty with Georgia Pet Coalition. If you'd like to come to the
Hi, good morning, Chairman Dickey and members of the committee. My name is Peggy McCarthy, and I'm a volunteer and board member for the Georgia Pet Coalition. I am here today to respectfully urge the committee to support HB 573. You are probably well aware that Georgia has a massive pet overpopulation crisis, as evidenced by our overcrowded public and private shelters. What you may not know is that this crisis is costing local governments and nonprofits approximately $135 million annually, excluding capital expenditures, according to a review of records in 2019. There are multiple causes of pet overpopulation, both intentional and unintentional, which require a multi-pronged approach to mitigate. HB 573 is one prong of the solution and removes opportunities for illegal pet sales by unlicensed transient roadside sellers who evade licensing and tax regulations. I wanted to address the question about the local control and state overreach. What often happens, an example is J&J Flea Market in Jackson County, which is only 4 miles from the Athens Area Humane Society in Athens-Clarke County. In 2022, Athens-Clarke County passed an ordinance that is this bill language. It's the exact bill language as this. So you would think, okay, we have solved the problem. But what they are seeing is an influx from Jackson County of surrenders and coming into their animal control and humane society. And when they interview the people why they are surrendering, we bought this on impulse from J&J Flea Market in a different county. So you have that problem. And you also have problems where these sellers just bounce from county to county. In Hall County, there's a regular seller who is selling multiple litters, so he should have a GDA license, but he does not. Police have no tool for this. They make him move. He can simply cross a county line to go sell in another county that doesn't have this ban. And also, I will get to address your question over there. And as Representative Gulick said, this bill gives law enforcement and animal control an easy tool to combat illegal pet sales. An outright ban alleviates the need for law enforcement to determine violations of licensing and breeding laws, which is a time-consuming process for law enforcement. Most importantly, this bill does not require additional state or local funding and does not require oversight or enforcement by the Department of Ag. That's why this bill is an easy tool. During the last legislative session, Senator Robertson and the Sheriff's Association were consulted and gave a favorable response. This bill protects responsible breeders who comply with the laws. It will still permit hobby breeders and breeders of hunting dogs to sell from their residential or business properties or through online sales. To the question I think that you asked, a breeder can sell from their home. If a breeder is uncomfortable with a potential buyer coming to their home or business, they would be permitted to meet at a police department or sheriff's office to complete a prearranged sale. Alternately, an arrangement can be easily made to meet at a veterinarian's office where the pet could be examined at the time of purchase. This bill does not affect the transfer of pets at sanctioned events, fairs, fair shows, or other agricultural exhibitions, nor a family giving away an accidental litter of puppies. And Representative Gulick mentioned the local precedents for the ban on outdoor sales. In 2022, Athens-Clarke County and Forsyth County passed this ban using this bill language. There are 5 other jurisdictions in Georgia who have these bans, but they have weak language. They were first-generation ordinances. They have weak language and loopholes. State uniformity is needed to prevent these sellers from simply crossing county lines to evade these local laws. Louisiana and Virginia have this type of statute. There are also other counties that are now considering this ban, Hall County, Chatham County, And just this week, I spoke with Commissioner Bridget Thorne with Fulton County about initiating this. But you can imagine with 159 counties, that it would makes much more sense to be efficient and take care of this problem on the state level. Let's see. Finally, there are over 50 nonprofit rescues and shelters who endorsed the bill, and the list is growing. Some of these rescues and shelters are in the districts of members of this committee. When this bill was first introduced in the previous legislative session, the Georgia Veterinary Medical Association endorsed it. Upon revision of the original bill, the AKC lobbyist endorsed it. These revisions are contained in the current bill language. And thank you, Chairman Dickey, for letting me speak today.
Well, thank you for being here. You really know that very well. I think you're the expert on this. I appreciate that testimony. Does anybody on the committee got questions of her? She, I think, has probably got more experience than anybody in this problem and how our communities are dealing with it across our state and country. So thank you for being here. That was very informative. Hearing none, this hearing only. Thank you, Representative. Appreciate you bringing it here, and we'll certainly be looking at this bill going forward. We have one other bill on our agenda, but Representative Evans is not here. She told me she had a conflict and would like to put off hearing the bill, but however, in response to time, we have someone that does want to speak on the bill. It's a little unusual. Might have traveled. Cliff Dempsey, are you here? Yes. I really hesitant to let you speak to the bill without the presenter being here. Are you travel a long way, or are you able to come back if we hear this bill again? The bill is in your folder. It's let me find it here. It's not a long bill at all, and it's really, the bill really pushes some time back for these services for burial lots. I really think we're in a position should what's the wish of the committee? Would y'all want to hear from him a little bit? I think Representative Evans is probably not an expert on it anyway, and I would think this would be a good perspective. So why don't you come to the podium, Mike, and just give who you represent and a little explanation of this bill. Save us a little time.
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thank you. My name is Cliff Dempsey. I'm a third-generation cemeterian. I have cemeteries in Cartersville, Ackworth, and Marietta. I also serve on the legislative chair and committee for the Georgia Cemetery Association, and I'm also the state board chairman for the State Board of Cemeterians, appointed by Governor Perdue back in 2008 and reappointed by Governor Kemp recently. So I come to you today really to speak upon House Bill 486 to sort of explain a little bit about some of the intent, but actually to see that actually what's been presented with this bill is really a redundant legislation. Up in Section B, it talks about, and that's specifically of our cemetery law, about pre-need escrow deposits and the money being there for when a burial merchandise or services need to be rendered, if that's in 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. And what this legislation is planning to do is actually extend pretty much the statute of limitations up till the 2 years after maybe a death has occurred. But if, once again, this this law would be redundant to our current law already, which is, talks about how where we are under the Secretary of State's purview in terms of our escrow accounts and our trust accounts, and therefore there's money set aside for that. And that's one reason our state board was created in 2008, so consumers can come to the state board and have their any complaints filed with the state board. We meet every other month to listen to these complaints, and then we're there to solve the consumers' complaints for the state of Georgia. So that's the main purpose of our board, and we're very proud of what we do and what we can have accomplished over the last many years for the consumers for the state of Georgia. So we just feel this would be this law would be redundant with our current law and just really adding more legislation to what we already have. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you. We do have a question from Representative Carter.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Thank you for this. As I was reading this, I was thinking about when we were kids, which was a long time ago,
Right.
that my family bought plots. And so I guess I'm trying to make sure that I'm clear, because I read, was this specifically for pre-need policies, or will this affect families like mine that bought plots like 50 years ago that they're still, we haven't used them? The 2-year is where I'm probably most concerned, but I'm trying to make sure that this is just for pre-need, or is this for plots that were bought years ago and just haven't used them?
Right. It could be for both, but basically, when someone enters a pre-need contract with a perpetual care cemetery, especially for merchandise and services, that money is put into an escrow account. Therefore, it protects the consumer's rights to have that delivered when that time may occur. It could be 10 years, 20 years. A typical cemetery pre-need contract is anywhere from about 8 to about 16 years to 20 years after they purchase it. So they may not use that or order that memorial or the monument, until that time when a death occurs. Then the money's taken out of that trust to be sure, guaranteed to the consumer that the money is there to pay for their memorial, their burial vault, things like that. In terms of a burial lot or a burial right, it's really an interment right. When they purchase that, that's under that contract that they would do, and that would be under pretty much contract law, civil law, because if there's an issue with the contract in terms of an installment plan or something like that, that's always handled under the Consumer Protection Act and a contract law for the state of Georgia. But in terms of the pre-need, that money's set aside, and then whenever that, so if someone even in 20 years has an issue that okay, this cemetery did not provide the memorial for my mother now that she's passed away, then they need to contact the state board, and we would certainly get involved, even though if it's 15 or 20 years down the road that way. So like I said, this legislation is just a little bit redundant of what we're already covering.
Representative Donahue.
That's all right.
Go
Thank you,
ahead.
Mr. Chairman. I'm sure Representative Donahue probably has a question. Well, thank you. All right, thank you for coming today. I was looking over this, the change in the verbiage, and it looks like the change is that, let's see, line 28, cause of action under this code section shall be brought within 2 years of the date of sale, whether or not pursuant to a written contract, provided, however, that the sale is of a burial lot, and it goes through it. It looks like it says, and then it goes down, shall be brought within 2 years of the date of the completion of such sale, or within 2 years of the request for such burial lot. So the old verbiage on 26 and 27, it says from the scheduled completion of the contract of the sale or the date of the sale, there's no contract. So it looks like it's actually cleaning up the language a little bit rather than putting an additional burden on, because it's specifying it's from the date of sale.
Right. One thing, when we enter a contract with a customer or consumer, then it's under, whatever, if they say they pay for it over 2 or 3 or 5 years, or even pay cash for it at that time, then that is already taken care of. And in terms of if if something were to go wrong, the statute of limitations with this, per se to that contract, would be maybe 10 or 15 or 20 years. But if it says, if the complaint is merchandise or services are not delivered, then that is already covered in our law, because we have to deliver that. And if not, the Secretary of State obviously gets involved and has legal action against that, licensed cemetery. So this is just sort of extending, and if we ever, as a business owner, if we ever wanted to sell our cemetery, we would be selling this continued, the liabilities in terms of the escrow would go with, obviously, with the new buyer. But having this added, the statute of limitations that way would be a little bit egregious that way.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Representative Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I appreciate your testimony here today. My understanding, of course, is as you said, in a sale of the cemetery, the escrow accounts, that's always a big issue. You want to make sure those are there, but it's really difficult for a buyer of a cemetery to know for sure that the escrow account is accurate and that everything's fully accounted for. You really don't ever discover that, I don't think, until someone shows up and said, Mom passed away last night. I'm so glad we got this pre-need 15, 18 years ago. And you go, I don't got any record of it. And so what I understood has always been the tension is from the standpoint of a cemeterian, you sell the cemetery, the lot, and that's sort of you receive the money, but your performance of the contract doesn't really happen until the person dies and they need the space, and that could happen years from now. And the way the statutes of limitation are drafted, it could effectively preclude a family from any reasonable remedy if it turns out that somebody along the line didn't do something they were supposed to do. The escrow account's gone, it's missing, there's not enough money in there, you have absolutely no record. I know most cemeterians do try to address that issue, but they may have wanted a particular space that was with other family and they can't get that. And I think there's sort of a sense that, well, a space, 3,000 feet over this way, not next to Mom, I can't put Mom next to Dad, or can't put, my child with the family is sort of something they bargained for that is difficult to compensate, and under the existing statute, they may have no claim. Certainly, there is a chance of the Secretary of State getting involved, but I don't believe the Secretary of State can award any kind of damages to the family or really reward any relief other than sanction the cemetery that didn't do, that somewhere along the line didn't do something it was supposed to do. And I think that's part of what she's trying to address with this bill here.
A few things on your comment. I appreciate that. One thing is when we talk about burial rights, conveyance of interment rights, when someone purchases a conveyance of interment right, because we don't actually sell the dirt. A lot of people think that we sell that dirt and they can go plant flowers and stuff like that. We sell a conveyance of interment right. It's a right to be interred into that space. And when they purchase their contract, they actually choose that specific space. So it's not just you get your choice in the cemetery and come back in 30 years whenever you might need it and choose it. They're actually, every cemetery is mapped out, specific space. So when they purchase that conveyance of interment right, that space is recorded, and then we call it a deed. It's not a deed like a real estate deed, but we call it a deed in our industry. It's a conveyance of interment right for space, Section 42, Section A, space 1 and 2. So that is their space. So that doesn't ever go away. Now, there may be instances where some clerical error happens, but therefore it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. I won't say it doesn't happen. But in terms of the merchandise and services, that's where the escrow comes in, and that's where, because really, when they buy the contract and pay for it, then that conveyance, that is theirs. So they can walk out and see, I'm at this section, and this is where I'm going to be right next to my mom and dad. So therefore, in terms of the merchandise and services, that's where the memorial or burial vault obviously is not going to be used until 10, 15 years down the line. And that's why that money is set aside. And that's why the Secretary of State, controls that money along with the cemetery to do that. So it's two different things in terms of like coming back and having issues. with even when a death occurs, because the lot is already there. It's not going to be changed.
It's supposed to be an occupied.
Absolutely.
But, you know, and while I agree it doesn't happen often, it does happen in some cases.
Sure.
And so I feel like that's part of what she's trying to get at here, because I think that happened to someone in one of her constituents.
Okay, and once again, I would be more, and I wish I could be able to meet her, and I would love to be able to talk to Representative Evans about this issue and have her even, we'd be love to talk to her from a state board level, and be able to, solve any issues that someone may have had in the past, because I think it's somewhat of an isolated issue.
Well, and I would agree. I don't think it happens a lot, but when it does happen, I think there's a desire that the law should allow for that. So I appreciate your approach to it, and I would encourage you to chat with her.
Yeah,
about
I
it.
would like to, because that's why our board was created, to be a consumer advocate rather than more litigation. We don't really need more litigation. We need more people working together to solve the consumer's
Well,
problems.
thank you, and I appreciate your commitment to that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dempsey, for being here, and thank the committee. I know this was a little unusual not having the author here, and but I just thought in the essence of time we start having this conversation. It is a little unusual and complicated. We're not experts on this, and really don't want to be. But so thank you, committee, for hearing this, and we've got a lot of questions, and I hope we can speak to Representative Evans on the House floor or whenever we can, and continue this discussion on this bill, and bring it back next time. So, is there any other business needs to come before the committee? Appreciate our leg counsel, and appreciate Bailey being here, filling in this morning for research and committee. So with that, look for possibly another committee meeting early next week. Time is getting short, as everybody knows, till Sunny dies. So if we want to move any of these bills, I think we got to meet a little sooner rather than later to get it through the process. So thank y'all. Meeting adjourned.